ask you, Sean. I wanted to ask you, man. Like, you got a pretty good part. I think I'm pretty good about the history of boxing, but you're really good at it as well.
Yeah.
Historically, like Terence Crawford, what do you feel like he stands among not just the great welterweights of all time, but some of the the great fighters of all time?
He's definitely an all-time great welterweight, an all-time great fighter. Definitely both of those. An all-time great 140-pounder, all-time great 147. Lightweight, he was lineal and beat the top man at the time, Ricky Burns, but didn't get to unify and do his thing. Although a lot of us consider Sugar Shane one of the great lightweights, and he didn't unify, but did have a lot of title defenses at lightweight. But anyways, one thing that's very special about Terence Crawford at welterweight is that he's won every fight by knockout, and that every fight has been a title fight. So from his first fight, fighting Jeff Horn for the WBO title, from the first time he fought, he's been fighting as a world champion, and he's won every single fight by knockout. Now, people will talk about the quality of resume and all that, but I think knocking out Errol Spence and knocking out Sean Porter in 2 of the last 3 fights, guys who had never been stopped, and in Spence's case, never lost, as we know, that kind of puts an end to the resume.
Puts that stamp on the resume.
To solidify the fact that he had beaten some good fighters, at welterweight, like Kaviaskas, who was undefeated heading into that fight, and Jose Benavidez, who, had a maybe a controversial decision against Herrera back in the day, but was undefeated. And people talk about was on one leg, but Jose Benavidez was a phenom as a teenager, was an incredible talent. I'm talking incredible hand speed, incredible exchanges back and forth with Pacquiao at Pacquiao's peak when he was a teenager. And then he gets shot in the leg, and that compromises his ceiling for the rest of his career. But whatever Jose Benavidez had on that one leg, and his hand speed came back. He had won a couple fights in a row with Top Rank, and his hand speed was good. Whatever Jose had, he left in the ring that night with Crawford, and that was an underrated win. So, but again, what's special about Terence is he's won every fight as a welterweight by knockout, and they've all been title fights. So you could start to, before this fight, I'd have said, I favor De La Hoya, him in Trinidad. I know he's a counterpuncher. I don't know. Now you can put him ahead of someone like De La Hoya, who I really love. And I still think De La Hoya Crawford would be a 50-50-ish fight. But now I give the edge to someone like Crawford, because I go, well, look how much De La Hoya struggled with an older Whitaker. He got the job done, but he struggled mightily. Crawford would be able to pull the trigger and take it a couple steps further than Purnell, and probably would have beat a prime Oscar. So I still put Terence behind someone like Sugar Ray Leonard at welterweight, but I still would put Floyd a little ahead of him. It's an argument there. It's an argument there with guys like him and Floyd, even guys like him and Hearns, where if you think Hearns at 6'2" would have beat him head to head, but Hearns, lost his biggest fight at welterweight, couldn't unify like Terence did. So if you're Terence Crawford, you got quite the argument against just about anybody at welterweight all time. Because again, De La Hoya couldn't unify. He lost his big one against Trinidad. I thought he won that fight, but he gave away those rounds like we all know and lost. And so Crawford ranks at the top of the top at welterweight,
Yeah, he's pretty up there. I know a lot of people have asked about like Crawford versus Floyd, and I know Crawford had that comment that of course if he fought Floyd in his prime, he'd beat him out. And I'll ask you all that later. But I actually wanted to ask you this because I thought this was pretty interesting. You spent like countless hours at the Mayweather gym covering Floyd during his career. You've also, I know, been ringside for a lot of Crawford's fights.
Yeah.
How do you feel those guys are different from each other? Because I feel like they're both great. They're both two of the best welterweights we've seen in our lifetime. But how are those guys different from your experience covering them, Crawford and Spence, or Crawford and Floyd, I should say?
It's funny. Remember I said that arrogant word with Inoue got me in so much trouble. People took it the wrong way without realizing arrogance can often be a compliment for a great fighter. Eric El Torrile Morales, along with Hopkins, is my favorite fighter ever. El Torrile was extremely arrogant, and like Roberto Duran, very macho and arrogant, and it's part of what made them great. And a lot of people say, well, it's not arrogant if you back it up, and I understand that, but Floyd's arrogance exceeds his self-belief, exceeds even Crawford a little bit. And Crawford is a little bit more of a savage than Floyd. You know, Floyd's a little bit more like, I'm not getting my hands dirty. I let the big bodyguards, I let the Great Wall take care of these dudes.
Yeah, yeah.
Crawford's more like, I want to do it. I want to forget the bodyguard. I want to wrangle his ass down. And, you know, Terence Crawford likes to inflict punishment more. Floyd Mayweather likes to win that much more. Like no, they both love to win. I mean, they're both competitive maniacs, right?
They just go about it different ways.
Yes, but Crawford's a little bit more of a savage. Like I said, Floyd's a little bit more, he'll let the bodyguards take care of that. And Crawford's a little bit more, I'll do it myself. But Floyd has even more of a it's hard. It's hard to articulate it in the right way. Feels he's entitled to even more from life. You know, Floyd thinks of himself like a king, like a pope, like the way a president of a country would, you know. And so he, you know, I think along with that psychology, he expects to win that much more. Does that make sense? Like, he's royalty. Like, how dare you cretins even try to share the ring with me?
Yeah, you nincompoops. How dare you scallywags think that you could even win a round against me?
Right. Whereas Crawford's a little bit more like down and dirty. Like, I'll fuck somebody up, you know. Like, I once heard Crawford hanging out. I was at Jay Prince's and he's talking with Shakur.
The gym, Houston.
No. This is at Jay's house.
Oh shit. Okay.
And Terence is talking with Shakur Stevenson, and they're shadow boxing. They're messing around, both as a southpaw. And I saw how lightning fast Terence was there. And Terence is like, yeah, man, I got to get back to boxing, you know, because lately I've just been knocking motherfuckers out. He's explaining to Shakur and I'm listening to him and I'm like, no wonder I think he's getting touched a little bit more at welterweight. And because he's talking to Shakur and he's just like, you know, I got to get back to my piece, you know, my boxing shit, but I just been enjoying knocking motherfuckers out. And someone like Floyd, who I've heard in the gym, like you're asking me, you know, hearing them in the gym all these years and how they're different. Someone like Floyd in the gym with Tank will be loading up, hurting guys, breaking, you know, giving them black eyes, busting their noses open. And Floyd will be telling them, box. Like, I know you can do that. I know you got power and all that. I want you to box. So, you know, I think Crawford's naturally a guy that likes to inflict punishment, that can tighten up and be the boxer. And he is naturally a boxer, but tighten it up like he did against Errol and make no mistakes. But he's naturally the guy who wants to exchange, whereas Floyd is more naturally the guy who is going to keep it tightened up and isn't trying to make it an exchange. But if he needs to, he can be the guy that will exchange and will be a dog. So it's just, they both can do both. They both can be dogs and they both can be the smart guy. But I think Terence prefers to be the dog a little bit more than the smart guy sometimes. And Floyd definitely prefers to be the smart guy over the dog. But if he has to, he can. And I think, and moving on to what's probably next, you know, who do I think would win, Crawford and Mayweather?
Yep.
I give the edge to Mayweather just because I work for Fight Hype, right? And we're Floyd Hype.
That's right.
That's it, right? That's it. That's all I can say. No, but I favor Floyd because his gifts. First and foremost, the number one reason I would favor Floyd. You guys have to understand. Don't let recency bias set in. This man's gifts on his best nights were unfair. It was a little bit. The only other guys I could really. Well, no, we've had some great fighters, you know, we've had some great fighters, but the two guys that come to mind when Floyd was on is a young Ali before the Vietnam, you know, Vietnam,
Clay,
and Roy Jones at 68 and at 75, just unfair gifts. And he wasn't quite the puncher at 47. Those two were, Ali and Roy, but his reflexes, his hand speed, and his foot speed and his vision were unfair. It was especially the reflexes, and especially hand speed.
He was so great at anticipating what his opponent was gonna do. Floyd, like even if the opponent didn't throw a punch at him, he was waiting to pull that head back and throw that straight right hand, you know, pull counter.
Like cat-like reflexes are almost always an exaggeration, but they weren't with Floyd. And Terence has some great fucking reflexes. And Terence has some great hand speed and some great footwork and foot speed. But Floyd's weren't a 10 out of a 10. They're from another dimension. Like his reflexes and his gifts were on another dimension on his best nights. Now, Terence might win the fight. He's one of the few fighters Floyd's size at 5'8" that actually has the arm length of Floyd. His arms are, I think, even a little longer than Floyd's. And Floyd almost never fought someone with his own length. And seldom did he fight guys who were as fast as him. And Terence, I think, is just a millimeter, the millisecond slower than Floyd, but he's super fast. And he's a better puncher than Floyd. And he's even longer than Floyd. And he's a southpaw. And he's great in the exchanges. So I could see Crawford winning the fight. Like, it's not blasphemy to say you think Crawford wins. But I just think Floyd, on his best nights, was so gifted. It's so hard to hit. His reflexes were on another level, and his hand speed. So I think even as great as Terence is, Floyd would have won a decision.
And his self-belief. I mean, that guy's self-belief is pretty up there.
No, so is Terence's.
No, so is Terence, but I mean, I don't know, man. Like,
do you remember when Nazeem Richardson told Shane, this is what we expected. We knew you were going to hit him in the mouth, and then the fire-breathing dragon would come out.
Yeah.
He said before the fight, he goes, I expect us for Shane to hit Floyd, and then we're going to have a fire-breathing dragon on our hands. And it's like, so don't, I could see that happening a little bit in that fight, that Crawford pushes Floyd to his limit and takes Floyd to a place that very few fighters ever did, and Floyd responds and, is up to the task, does what he has to do, and wins a decision. It might not have been the fight of the year, but I think Floyd would have slowed it down, made a miss, and would have got the 3 to 5 straight right hands that he needed, to get it. So
okay. Well, I wanted to